Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Well, the name of the game is Monopoly. That's how the big boys play it. First, it was the banks, consolidating down to about a half dozen banks. And understand, that lies squarely at the foot of Bill Clinton and his administration. It was his chief of staff at the White House, Erskine Bowles, out of North Carolina, that pushed through the merger of North Carolina's large bank, Nations Bank, and Bank of America, moving Bank of America's headquarters to Charlotte, North Carolina, where it became Bank of America. That's the name that had. But that set off a wave of mergers that resulted in a half dozen banks that were too big to fail, too big to jail. Now we see the same thing happening with the media companies. AT&T and Time Warner announced their merger. If that happens, it's going to set off another wave of mergers, and there are already only about a half dozen media companies. The repercussions of this are incredible if we look at free speech, but that's not the only thing that's being consolidated. We now have the voting machine companies being consolidated. One company has about 50% of the voting machines nationwide. That is Dominion Voting. And Dominion Voting and another large company, there's only about 3 large companies in the United States, another large one, HIG Capital, which runs Hart InterCivic machines, are on the list of big money donors to guess who? The Clinton Foundation. As we consolidate into a couple of different companies, or maybe just one, soon there will be one. It's just like Highlander. There can only be one, okay? And there's going to be one person sitting at the center of this web of corruption, and that is Hillary Clinton. That's the way this is going to go down. Now, we see from recent releases of Guccifer 2.0, the DNC hacks and other things, we have seen this list of donors, and we can now see that Dominion voting machines used in 600 jurisdictions in 22 states in the United States, and about 80,000 Dominion image cast precinct optical scan tabulators, okay, being used. That was even going back to 2010. It's more than that now. But that was the kind of market penetration these people had. These people are now big donors to the Clinton Foundation, we understand. And understand also that this Canadian corporation is also connected to Sequoia Voting Systems. Sequoia Voting Systems is also connected to Smartmatic. Smartmatic is connected to Soros. The knee bone's connected to the hip bone, whatever, okay? This is the way this works. It is like a skeleton web of cronyism. And understand that Smartmatic, as I pointed out before, was created by friends of Hugo Chavez in Venezuela to control those elections there. They did such a good job. They used them to rig elections throughout Central and South America and the Philippines and other places. Then we have the GOP in Utah bringing them in to run the GOP primary this year, paying them $80,000. You have to understand, this is a bipartisan scam to run these elections. That's why they're putting in electronic voting machines. They want to tell us that it was a response to the problems that occurred in 2000 with the Gore-Bush election. Yet what these machines do is give them the perfect way to erase any means of auditing the election, completely removing the paper trail. And that's what we see here in Texas. Yes, Monday, we went down to talk to the director of elections in Texas because of the many ways in which he has shut down the paper trail. And of course, in August, he tried to set in a new wave of regulations to remove even more auditing capability that is required by law. Now, he has the capability in many of these cases to shut these down as the director of elections. These, however, were procedures that were put in place by the legislature concerned about the integrity of elections when we use electronic voting machines. And so the question is, why would he shut these things down? Why would he shut them down for the expediency of his workers or so that he could use a particular vendor? There is a long article that has the questions that I would have asked him if he would have talked to us on Monday. An article, Levers of Power, Flushing the Vote Down the Memory Hole. And you can see in this article the many different ways that our director of elections here, Keith Ingram, has tried to shut down the audit trail. These are the same tactics that are being used nationwide, folks. Again, going back to what we began with, these voting machines are being provided by only 2 or 3 companies, 50%, more than 50% by one company. They're going to use the same tactics to control the election, to shut down the auditing process. And we can see that based on lawsuits that are going on here in Texas going back to recent elections. Now, some of the issues that we put in here, the fact that he shut down and waived laws requiring a partial manual recount, shut that down. He waived laws requiring the printing of paper backup results tapes. He ignored laws requiring printing of legally sufficient ballot images for recounts, and he has ignored the laws that allow poll monitors to look at what is happening in the election precincts. Not only that, this particular individual, again, as we said, this is a bipartisan issue. It's not just Democrats. It is Republicans as well. And this particular individual had a private practice, was in private practice here in Austin, took massive pay cuts to go to Arkansas to join a law firm there that was run by someone who used to be partners with Hillary Clinton at the Rose Law Firm. He was partners with Hillary Clinton, with Vince Foster, with Webster Hubbell. And he was the managing director there. So this guy took a massive pay cut to go there. He then came back to Texas, not making much more money, eventually became the director of elections. He still is only at 40% of what he had in private practice. And so the question is, what's behind those career moves? What's behind the connections to the friends of the Clintons? And of course, the guy that he worked for that was a partner with Hillary Clinton at the Rose Law Firm is a big contributor, again, to the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton campaign, just like these voting machine companies. It all comes back to the same thing, story after story after story. The issue really is, why can't we get rid of these electronic voting machines? As we saw with a story from Don Salazar today, Texas County here, as we saw problems with electronic voting machines, what did they do? They went to the emergency backup procedure, and that is to go back to paper ballots. On Monday, we had this report from Paul Joseph Watson that we saw votes being switched from Donald Trump to Hillary Clinton. People would vote a straight Republican ticket, and it would do that except for the presidential race. The presidential race, it would give them Hillary Clinton. And so presumably this was happening in another county in Texas, and what they did was they put in paper ballots as emergency procedure. Folks, it is an emergency. We need to put in paper ballots. We need to request paper ballots when you go to vote so that there is some kind of an audit trail. And one of the things that needs to be done, whether Donald Trump wins this or not, we have to reform the election process. We have to get rid of the electronic voting machines. Whenever anything goes wrong, just as we see with a story from Don Salazar, they switch back to paper ballots. When you have to contest an election, you have to audit an election, what do? You try to go back to the paper records if they can be reproduced out of the voting machines. If you don't have a director of elections like we do here in Texas that does everything he can to shut down those auditing records. Why don't we just start with paper ballots in the first place? That's what they did in the UK. That's why they were able to defeat the mainstream media and the polls, the opinion pollsters who were telling them the day of the election that Brexit was going to lose by 10 points. Now, we also had today that premiered on the Alex Jones radio show. We had another Project Veritas exposure of a top Clinton ally who was caught accepting $20,000 from a foreign donation. Project Veritas released a fourth video in the latest series uncovering corruption connected to Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. And they say, in the efforts to prove the credibility of the undercover donor featured in the videos and to keep the investigation going, Project Veritas Action made the decision to donate $20,000 to Robert Creamer's effort. Soon after the transfer was made, the donor's niece, another Project Veritas Action journalist actually, was offered an internship with Creamer. The more money that was promised to Creamer, the more access Project Veritas journalists seemed to get, it continues. Okay, this is what we see continually, a pay-to-play procedure. This is the corruption that is happening. Now, I said at the beginning, we're talking about monopoly. It's the monopoly banks, the monopoly voting machine companies, and then, of course, the monopoly media that is coming towards us. Donald Trump jumped on this merger with AT&T and Time Warner this weekend immediately, pointing out how this will destroy America, how it will destroy democracy. Why would a corporate merger destroy democracy? Well, he's seen how the media has treated him. He's seen how the media is not interested in any stories of corruption about the Clintons. Nevertheless, they will treat with the utmost respect and veracity any rumors of things that happened to him as personal attacks, even though you have somebody accusing him of inappropriate touching and saying that it happened at a concert that never occurred. The media still runs with it, just as we saw yesterday with Megyn Kelly and Newt Gingrich. They don't want to talk about the issues. And so this is a real First Amendment issue. If we have only one or two companies that are going to control, not only be the providers of the internet, but they're also going to be providers of information content, pulling all of that together, that all is something that is going to be essentially creating a net that we cannot get through. It all ties together as well with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the transatlantic partnerships. Those agreements will use copyright to shut down the freedom of the internet. We've talked about this many times. We can see how this works in the fight against Kim.com and Mega Upload. They went after Kim.com doing the sorts of things that we see YouTube doing all the time. When somebody has a copyright claim, what they do is they destroy the link, but they don't take the video down. Mega Upload did that, and they took down his multi-billion-dollar company, saying, you still have that video that we had the copyright claim on. That's the way they will take down anybody who tries to provide content or is a provider of original content. They want to be the channel through which everybody has to come. That is the dangerous thing about it. So whether you're an entertainer or whether you're a journalist, you will have to go through AT&T and Time Warner to get to your end market. They will take a big cut on it, and they will also work with the government. Take a look at this. Big tech media mergers raise fresh privacy concerns. Of course they do. You didn't think that they were going to pass, they tried so many times to pass CISPA, SOPA, ACTA, PIPA. Finally, they got CISA, okay, the Cyber Intelligence Security Act, or whatever they call it, okay? It was nothing more than an effort to allow these people to turn over information that they collect about you to the government and not be sued by you for violating their privacy. What it does is it grants immunity to these corporations. We told you at the time that as soon as that was done, they were going to be stepping up the way in which they collect information from you. And of course, they've been collecting information and turning it over to the government. They're just concerned that they're going to have legal liability in the courts when people realize how they've been violating our privacy. So what they did was they gave them immunity. And they came back time and time and time again here in America as well as Europe with these various acts that would grant immunity to these corporations. So what is happening with this is that they're going to use copyright violations to shut down journalism. They're going to use their control of all the media to control even the entertainment that you see. They're going to watch everything that you watch, everything that you do, and they're going to report that to the government. Understand that as we look at these NSA revelations that came out with Snowden, they kept saying it's simply metadata. We're not recording all your conversations and all your text messages. Well, whether or not that is true, the metadata is far more important to them than the actual phone conversations or texts that you have. Using data mining, using the tactics of geospatial intelligence, activity-based intelligence, human domain analytics, they look at the metadata and they can tell everything about you, your political affiliations, your religious affiliations, beliefs, who you're friends with. Everything about you can be mapped into a geographical position even. That's what the geospatial intelligence is. It's the fastest growing branch of intelligence. That's why all of this is coming together in one issue. And the important thing is that Donald Trump smelled this skunk and warned us about it at the very beginning. He's waking people up in ways that we've never seen a politician wake people up. He understands the tactics that they're using. He understands the strategy and the end game that they're after. And this is why it is so important that we stop this globalism, this surveillance state, these tactics that they're doing, the monopoly tactics that they're using on people. We have to stop this now. Now, of course, the other aspect about this is the open borders. And I think it's interesting today that we had immigration protesters, they call themselves an immigration rights group, shut down the George Washington Bridge, the upper level of the George Washington Bridge, one of the major access areas into New York City. They shut it down. They had 90-minute traffic jams. They had bumper-to-bumper traffic that was barely inching along, they said. And I look at this and I say, well, are they going to give a pass to Chris Christie? They're trying to put him in jail with a felony because they say he was vindictive in terms of shutting down a bridge that allowed traffic to go back and forth from New York to New Jersey. Well, what about this? And why would these people think that they are entitled to come in to our country and shut down our transportation? Well, for the same reason that a Syrian refugee, this is a story on Infowars.com, a Syrian refugee immigrates into the United Kingdom, gets 320,000 pounds, that's about $500,000 a year, for his 4 wives and 23 children. 4 wives and 23 children. Now, we've been told by Hillary, we see the documents now where she told a Jewish group that they weren't going to be able to vet the Syrian refugees that were flooding into Jordan. They wouldn't be able to tell the real refugees from the jihadis. She said, we have no way to vet them. Guess what? We don't have any way to vet those people today. But it's not even that. It's the economy, stupid. We cannot afford to support all the people who want to just come here and live at our expense or shut down our transportation. So perhaps what they did was recruit a lot of voters for Donald Trump in New York today. Stay with us when we come back. Alex Jones talks to Danny Williams, who had his YouTube channel banned forever today. 30 million views of that press conference. They cut it off. It was the top search item for Bill Clinton. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on this the last few months. You probably noticed I've been more crazed, more focused, less brain fog, more energy, more special reports, and it's because of Brain Force.
We kept changing this formula over and over and over again until it became sort of a grand puzzle. This just increases the compounds you already have.
This is what you're actually designed to run on. You will find Brain Force, Survival Shield X2, and other game-changing products at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.